Well, look who decides to return. The prodigal son, the recalcitrant and missing Gads. Yeah, it's been a while. It's been a long minute since I've done a sit rep, but here it is, sit rep, the first one in, I don't know what, like 3 weeks, 3.5 weeks. I owe you an expression. I owe you an explanation, is what I owe you. So I spent 2 weeks overseas over in the Kingdom of Jordan conducting some training, got on a metal tube filled with other human beings who were constantly breathing their diseases and such what. Was very exhausted from moving house, traveling overseas, doing training, getting back to a small child who was teething, didn't get much sleep, was jet lagged, and surprise, surprise, got ill, got the man flu, which those of you who don't know the man flu, it is actually the deadliest disease known to man and would have killed a lesser mortal. But I've fought my way through it, and as you may be able to hear from my voice, at the tail end of it, not 100% recovered yet, but hey, time waits for no man, and I can't just sit waiting to do another sit rep. So I thought, what the hell? I'll bang it out. We'll see how we go. We'll see how far my voice can get through this particular sit rep. So welcome. Thank you for joining me. I apologize about the long hiatus, but you know what? I'm a human being and I have a job. This is not my job. This does not pay me any money. And so it means I have to go and earn monies, dollaroos every now and then. Not every now and then, quite often, in fact. I have to disappear out into the world and earn them dollar bills, y'all. So that's where I've been. That's my explanation. But I'm glad to be back and glad to be doing these again, I think. There's obviously been a lot of news that's happened in the last 3 weeks since I've been able to do one of these. I have been keeping my eye on it sometimes when I've been in a state where I could. And I'm not talking about just a physical state, as in location, geography, but also a emotional and physical state internally where I have not been able to give two flying fucks about what's happening in the world because I've been horrifically sick. But I do have some things. I've cut it down this morning and it's stuff from probably the last, I want to say 5 to 7 days. Obviously, I've got news stories from the past 3 weeks, but I'm not going to touch on everything because I just don't know how far I can get into this particular one. So I'm going to try and make it a little bit shorter. I hope you have all been well and happy and smiling and prepping still and doing all that good stuff like gardening, although it is frigidly cold where I live right now. So the gardening is more garden preparation, I think, for the distant spring whenever that comes around here in my neck of the woods. All right, well, without any further ado, let's jump into it. First off, I'm going to talk about some geopolitical sort of stuff that's happening in South Africa, and it is to do with Russia and the strengthening ties between these two nations. What's been happening there? Now, South Africa is, it is always on my mind. No, I think South Africa is a very interesting little case study on partial mismanagement, not really partial, like a total mismanagement of certain sectors of their society. First and foremost being their energy sector. They're pretty much totally screwed. One of the stories that I'm not going to delve into, but I'll just give you the Cliff Notes version, is that they are pretty much at the verge of collapse from a number of reports of their energy, in their entire energy grid. So we often talk about in prepper circles, grid down situations and things like that, and the power getting turned off, and what are you going to do? South Africa is staring down the barrel of that in a very real way. They're having a lot of problems. The issue that this causes is the good old one that I like to talk about all the time, which is civil unrest. So without power, people get a bit antsy, people get a bit angry, and they like to express that anger. So there have been a lot of protests and riots that have been happening in South Africa. in different areas in South Africa for the past 3 months, I want to say, if you haven't been tracking that. And I will touch on some stuff about energy after this story. But this one in particular is about those civil unrest events. And South Africa is worried. So what would you do? What would you do if your country people are taking up arms, are charging out into the streets, are burning, are looting, are destroying? You might want to do something about that. I mean, unless you're at the USA, and then you're just like, oh no, it's okay because they're doing the right thing. It's fine because they're liberals. They're on the left. We don't have to worry about that. Well, any sane country would probably look at the cause root of that issue and go, let's try and tackle this, or at least let's promise the people that we can do something about it. That would be my first go-to. Being politicians, their first and really only course of action for most issues in their own nations is to lie about it. That's what I see most politicians doing. They just come out and say, yes, we're going to fix it. Yes, everything's going to be great. Yes, I'm the good person. Yes, it's their fault over there. It's their fault over there. It's everyone else's fault but mine. But I'm going to sort it out. And that seems to placate people for some reason, even though their track record is almost entirely the opposite, that they never actually follow through with these things, or very rarely follow through with whatever promises they're putting out there. South Africa hasn't taken that particular course of action. By the looks of it, what they've done instead is go and chat to Russia. Go and chat to Russia and say, hey, can we send you some weapons? We can do something here. So an army general in Moscow, South African army general was in Moscow in the past week. This is coming just after the South Africa was accused of sending Russia weapons. I've said this about many, many different things that are happening in Russia at the moment, or around Russia, how the moral high ground of the West is pointing fingers and saying people cannot deal with Russia, people cannot buy stuff off Russia, people cannot give things to Russia. And everyone is saying, yes, totally, absolutely. We would never give things to Russia. Why would we do that? Here's why you do that. Because their resources are fucking cheap at the moment and they are desperate for stuff. So they're going to buy whatever they can off anyone they can. They want friends. As it turns out, it looks like Russia has a bit of a bargaining chip in this particular case, putting down civil unrest. Russia has a little bit of a history with this, of quelling riots, of maybe not being so understanding of their protesters in their country. So Russia's sidled up to, this is all happening in my head, by the way, this next little sentence. Russia's sidled up to South Africa and said, I see, comrade, you have problem with your local populations. I have experience in this sort of problem. You also have weapons that we might need. So how about we do a little deal, huh? You give us weapons, we show you how to put down the riot, if you know what I mean. That's from the outside, from my perspective, that is what seems to be happening here. That Russia and South Africa both essentially want something, or you could argue need something off the other thing, and neither of them are particularly good. Weapons going to Russia, I mean, they're going to manufacture their own weapons anyway. They're going to find somewhere else to get them. But if they are there and South Africa has them and they are on offer, then I think Russia will take them. This is obviously going to exacerbate the war in Ukraine. This is obviously going to be a factor in exacerbating the war in Ukraine, because I think probably more than that is what the West is doing, pumping billions of dollars worth of warfighting machinery into Ukraine. I think that probably has a larger effect at the end of the day in exacerbating this issue. But this obviously isn't going to help either. The other part of this that obviously I want to highlight, if you haven't figured it out yet, is the increasing ties that are happening and the increasing segregation between the West and the BRICS nations. The BRICS, the S at the end, is South Africa. The R on the second part of that is Russia. So they're already in alliance. Why people are wagging their finger at them, going, "You shouldn't be sending weapons to Russia." Like South Africa should just turn around and go, "How about you go fucking mind your own business and fuck right off?" Because what do you think you're doing right now? You're doing the exact same thing. You're profiteering off war. Well, I want to profiteer off war too, and I'm going to do it with someone who I'm in a formal alliance with. You got a problem with that? I of course am in no way sanctioning or I mean, sorry, saying that this is a good thing. I'm just saying this is something that's happening and both sides are doing it. And again, what we're seeing is this overt virtue signaling from the West, who thinks they have the moral high ground on this. And I can't figure out why anyone would think they have the moral high ground on this. They are as down and as dirty in the mud as anyone else in this conflict. So that was the first interesting thing that's coming out of South Africa. The other interesting thing was, again, I should have ordered these things before doing this, but why would I do that? This one, most of these stories, by the way, were sent to me through my main source on Instagram. So thank you very much for that. I really appreciate it, as always. A South African community builds its own solar farm due to the lack of reliable energy. So if you were in a country where your government could not reliably give you energy, and they have already signaled that it is getting worse, it's gotten worse over the past 6 months. You've watched it get bad to badder to badderer, and it's about to get baddest. So you've seen that, and you go, you know what? I'm going to take the initiative here. Now, they built their own solar farm, this community. It was not gifted to them. The government did not do it. They did not create it. These guys went out and built it from their own ingenuity, their own two hands, which is fantastic. Except they just lost a court case and they have to shut it down. This is a real issue. There is this idea, and I ascribe to it myself, that if things got bad enough with the government, there are some of us out there, and it is you and I, it is us sort of people, the preppers, right, who are looking to this future and we're going, okay, I can see the potential for issues here. I can see some real problems in the pipeline. So I'm going to take care of this. And it's one of the big things that I'm always talking about is self-reliability. I'm going to take care of myself. I'm going to take care of my family. I'm going to take care of my circle, my community, and the rest of people. And hopefully that's an example enough for other people to do it. This is an issue, though. If the government then turns around and says, you cannot do that, we don't want you to build your own solar farms. We don't want you to purify or source your own water. We don't want you to grow your own food, to look after your own animals. We don't want you to care for yourself. You must do it through us. We are the gatekeepers for life, for everything that constitutes you living a normal, happy, healthy life. That's how serious I think this is. That these people without energy, without power, it is a matter of survival. If you think that power is just something frivolous and we can do without it, I would suggest going and reading the book 1 second after. And I know I bang on about these books all the time. 1 second after it's a novel about what might happen in a fictional community if an EMP event went off. So the storyline of this is they're in the US somewhere. I think it's like North Carolina or something, in a relatively small community. And one day they wake up and nothing works. Cars don't work. There's no electricity. There's no lights. There's no TV. There's no internet. There's nothing. How do they survive? Spoiler alert, they don't. No, they do. They survive as a community because there's 2 books that come after that in the trilogy. But the idea behind it is that the vast majority of people, and they're talking about Americans in this case, but I think this would be pretty true in most developed countries. The vast majority of people die, and they die very, very quickly. This was actually written by a guy who wrote a report for, it was either the Pentagon or White House on EMPs. And he has kind of championed this idea that we need to be more resilient when it comes to EMPs. He didn't get a lot of traction, so he thought, you know what, I'm going to put my ideas and my thoughts on what would happen into a novel and see if that gets more traction. And it has. So there is this idea that he talks about, that somewhere between 60 to 90% of people would die in the period between 4 to 6 weeks and a year. That's not very long. That's how serious energy could be. And these people here, they realize that. So they took it upon themselves to build their own solar farm, which I think is just fantastic, fantastic idea. And now it's being shut down. This sort of stuff is this sort of stuff that you want to pay attention to. You want to look at this in the world and go like, that's not good. That is not good. So there's one step here that I don't often talk about, and it's kind of around the idea of OPSEC. For those who don't know what OPSEC is, it's a military term meaning operational security, and it's about how much information you put out into the world. Most people are, how do I say this without being rude? No, I'll just be rude. Utterly fucking shit at OPSEC. They put way too much information out into the world unnecessarily. And it's usually through the form that you're looking at me on. It's usually through social media. People are constantly posting about their lives and putting photos of their children and stuff like that up on the internet. I'm like, don't do this. Oh, I'm going on holiday. Here's the periods that I'm going on holiday. Oh, here's my house that I just bought. Here's the address. There's all this sort of stuff that you shouldn't put up on the internet at all. People don't need to know that information. You should keep that information close hold. But what I'm talking about in this case is that if you do have, I don't know, alternate means of supplying your own food, like your gardens and things like that, if you have alternates like stored up food, if you have clean drinking water, if you've got ways of creating energy, as in electricity, these might be the sorts of things that you don't want to tell the world, that you don't want to put out there so much. So when the government comes knocking, they don't know what door to knock on, at least. So yeah, some disturbing stuff coming out of South Africa. South Africa. All right. What else do we have happening in the world? This one is interesting, going back over into the Ukraine area with Belarus. I mean, there's a whole heap of really tense things that are happening in this part of the world at the moment. That tension is slowly ratcheting up and ratcheting up, and we are pushing closer to what looks like it might be a larger war. I think anyway. One of the signs that we're looking at is Belarus. So Belarus has deployed tactical missile systems near the border. They've also deployed what they call dragon's teeth, which are just large concrete triangular objects that are designed to stop tanks. Now, this is on top of other defenses that they put in place on their side of the border. And Ukraine, again, in the classic double speak, what do you call it? Gaslighting that the Western propaganda machine has been pumping out for over a year now about this conflict. They pointed the fingers and said, look what they're doing. They're preparing for war. They're starting to build up in aggression. And I looked at that and I said, why would they put it on their side? Because those dragon's teeth, especially, they stop people getting in. They also stop tanks getting out. They just stop everything from moving. That doesn't seem like an aggressive move. That seems like a very classic defensive move. Belarus, to me, looks like and is acting like a nation that is afraid that something's coming. Again, same with missile systems. Now, are they afraid of something's coming, that something is coming because they are going to enter into the conflict, because they are going to allow Russia to launch more attacks from their nation? And then they would expect there to be retaliation against their nation. That's a possibility. It's definitely a possibility. It hasn't happened in that way yet, but certainly a possibility. But it looks to me from the outside, and my kind of very limited knowledge of military tactics, which is probably slightly more than other people's, having served in the military. But I wasn't a general or anything like that. I was just a grunt, just one of the dudes wandering around shooting stuff. It looks to me like defensive tactics. So yeah, I don't get where this propaganda is coming from and how it's angled at. But people read this sort of stuff and they go, "Oh, yep, Belarus is going to join the war. Yep, Belarus is going to attack Ukraine. It's a push towards Kiev. That's what they're going to do." Maybe. It's going to be hard to push towards Kiev, though, if you've blocked off all possible routes from any sort of heavy vehicle, from a car upwards. Anyway, like I said, I'm not a general. I'm not fighting this war. It's just interesting to me. Okay. What else we got here? Netherlands is going to enforce a 2 cow per field limit in a classic move which appears to be designed to piss off farmers, the people who feed the nation. The government, for some reason, has said, like, what we're going to do is restrict cattle numbers to 2 cows per field. And what they're talking about is roughly, what they say, a football pitch-sized field. Football, it's like a soccer pitch, right? I have no idea how big that is, but that's what they're going to do. 2 cows only. Now, I don't necessarily think there is a issue with limits. Like, we should have some sort of upper limit. We can't just pack cows in. Then you get issues like what you have in the US, where you've got these huge feedlots of cows packed into very small areas, and it has a high impact on the area. I think that we should look at more sustainable agriculture ideas and systems, and certainly limiting the number of cattle in any given field of area. That's not a bad idea. 2, though, over a soccer pitch, this seems a little extreme to me. I think it could be a little higher than that. But again, what we're looking at here, I think by design or by some sort of bad thinking, some sort of indoctrination into this green idea, whether it be that, or whether it be by design, some sort of nefarious one world government that's trying to limit the amount of human beings on the earth and make sure that we're totally beholden on them. It doesn't really matter. It's an attack on the food system again, and I always worry about these attacks on the food system. It's an issue that you need to stand up and look at and go like, no, anything that's attacking my ability as a human being to support my own life, that's an issue. That's an issue we need to fight against. 100%. Not to mention that Netherlands and Netherlands government and Netherlands farmers are not on great terms right now. They are, in fact, on horrible terms. Although the government, there has been changes within the government that have slid it more to a pro or a farmer-friendly sort of space. But it's certainly, I wouldn't describe it as farmer-friendly. It's not in a farmer-friendly space. It's just more towards that, from being very anti-farmer. But you know, those cows, their farts, they are clogging up the atmosphere with methane, killing us all. We're all going to die. We're all going to die by 2020. I mean 2025. I mean 2035. I mean 2050. I mean 2075. We're all going to die. So, James Bulgevich. Yo, Gads, welcome back. 100% nefarious anti-farming cow lies. Absolutely. I think, what did I hear recently? Cows and all what would you call it? Agricultural animals account for somewhere around 3% of the gases that we're emitting into the environment. 3%. And that's 3% if we're just taking, like, I know it's not carbon, but if we look at carbon, how much carbon is actually in the atmosphere? 0.04%. So you crunch the numbers, it's not much. Sat phones for US senators. This was a big one. This one got a lot of traction, at least on my feed, which I thought was good. It's good whenever I see something and I go, whoa, this needs a bit of attention on it. And then it does get the attention that I feel it deserves. I'm always very happy about that fact. Sat phones for US senators. So they handed out, or offered, I should say, sat phones for all 100 US senators. Apparently, over 50% of them have taken it up. They were told they should keep this on them at all times when traveling. Could just be a new policy. Look, we need you contactable at all times. Cell network around the world can be dodgy. Cell network within our own nation could be dodgy. So sat phone, that's what we're going to give you. That's our answer there for that, to make sure you're all accountable. That could be it. Something as simple as that. We need more national debt. We need to spend more money on crap that's probably not that necessary. How can we do that? Sat phones for all senators. How does that sound? That's a pretty good way to waste money. Why would you hand out sat phones to all senators? Why would you hand out sat phones to all senators? Why would you do that if you didn't think it was at least a possibility that the cell network was not going to work? What's a cell network that doesn't work? A cell net not work? I'll work on the jokes. All right. Like I said, I'm getting over sickness. I just look at this on the surface and I go, well, this tells me that they're expecting some sort of emergency, some sort of problem to arise in the future. Not to say that it will, but they're saying it's such a it's such a probability. The probability is high enough that we should issue sat phones to all these people who are, amongst the most important in our nation, is how they would think about. The government would think of themselves as very important. I obviously am inclined to disagree with that fact, but that's what they would think. We need them to communicate. We need those lines of communication to stay up in some sort of emergency. What sort of emergency would you need a sat phone for? How long would you be expecting cell network to be down? This is what I'm thinking when I look at this sort of stuff. Okay, so A, you think it's a probability that it could happen. B, you think it's a probability that it could happen and it would be an extended problem, because you probably wouldn't issue sat phones if you thought cell network could go down for 6 hours. You could keep, things could cruise on cruise control for a little bit with inertia for 6 hours and it wouldn't be a huge problem. You'd be thinking, I would imagine, or I'm thinking at least, that they are looking at this and they're going, what happens if cell network is down for 2 to 3 days at minimum? what happens if cell network goes down and does not come back? I think this is actually tied into EMP personally. I think this is more about the energy issue that could arise from that. If there is no electricity and the electricity is not coming back in a short period of time, if it's not coming back maybe ever, that's the sort of thing that you'd think, right, we need something for our solution makers to actually make solutions to stay connected with each other so they can talk to each other and come up with a coordinated effort in such a problem. They still haven't released the lists of which ones accepted the phones and who turned them down. That will say a lot about a further purpose as to why those phones were issued to begin with. That's from Savage the Wild, who's talking to me from the USA. Thank you for joining me. Yeah, very interesting, and I agree. Like, I haven't dug up any information on who has and who has not accepted these sat phones, whether it falls down party lines or whether it's some other issue why people are or are not taking it up. Certainly, if it fell down party lines, that would indicate to me that there might be some information that's being released within that party where they know something and they might not be releasing that information to the other party. But we don't know, so we can but merely speculate. All right, let's stay in the US. We're talking about the US. 30 tons of ammonium nitrate went missing by rail from Wyoming to California. What's curious is that the chemicals were sealed for departure. So a train starts off in Wyoming. On this train is 30 tons of ammonium nitrate. What's ammonium nitrate, you ask? It is a chemical that is used in fertilizers, most commonly used as a fertilizer for large-scale agriculture. What does it do, though? Well, you can mix ammonium nitrates with certain other products, which I'm not going to divulge on here because I don't want anyone doing it. Plus, if you tried to do it, you would be on a watch list very fast. It can be mixed with other products, and it can create a explosive material, which is, if memory serves me correct, a low explosive, which is what you commonly call a lifting charge. Now, this type of explosive was used in most famously. I'll give you two examples actually. Most infamously in the Oklahoma bombing, and more recently, this type of material accidentally exploded in Beirut. So that Beirut explosion that occurred, that was this product, ammonium nitrate, going up. Now, in of itself, it's not necessarily dangerous, but if mixed, as I said, mixed with the right things or kept in the wrong conditions, it can blow up. So 30 tons of it is quite a bit of bang, and you would be able to do a fair bit of damage with that. So this sort of stuff has been increasingly tracked over the years, and is tracked in a number of countries. And like I said, if you misuse it, if it goes missing, if you do not store it correctly in places like Australia, you will go on a watch list. You will potentially get a slap on the wrist, or you may even be put on some sort of potential terrorist list and arrested. Now, interesting things about this story. First one, I read on one source that a train leaving in Wyoming rocks up in California. Apparently that takes a month. Pretty slow trains. Fair enough, though. With the US's current track record of having trains fall off tracks, you might want to take it slow, especially with something like ammonium nitrate. But I just looked at that and I'm going, oh, that's weird. A month, all right. Second weird thing, this was sealed. Okay, it was sealed up. I don't know how they do that. Tape and locks and weird sort of anti-tamper things. It arrives in California. They undo the seals, apparently, on one source I was reading, that the seals were, they said they're untampered. The locks are still intact. Everything looks hunky-dory. They took it off. They opened it up, and it's empty. Was this fucking X-Files? Did someone beam in there and, I don't know, disappear it through a black hole? Like, what happened here? What happened here and how? It is very mysterious. And obviously, a little bit of a news story because this points towards nefarious intent, that someone went to that effort to take this. Or maybe it's just a farmer who's jack of the increase in fertilizer prices recently is like, no, I can't grow anything without this stuff that I use, so I need it and I'm going to take it. Whatever it is a disturbing story in some ways, and you know, this is something that, like, you know, unless it rocks up somewhere, unless some sort of investigation leads to where it is, it's the kind of thing you want to kind of keep a little bit of an eye on, knowing that there's 30 tons of ammonium nitrate out there somewhere. Could be a problem. All right, let me catch up on some comments here. SpyScale27 says, our tax paper money is buying those phones for them, right? Be transparent. Yes. I mean, not our taxpayer money, SpyScale, because I know you're within the same nation's borders as I am, but the US tax cattle money is going towards these sorts of things. I mean, I'm not saying Australia is in any way, shape, or form innocent of misusing the tax cattle's money. That's me, by the way. Also, I pay tax. As much as it fucking irks me, I do pay it. Because I don't want to get thrown in jail. No, Australia definitely misspends large, gross amounts of our hard-earned money. For those who don't know, most Australians, actually I shouldn't say most Australians because I don't know how many Australians actually fit within what tax bracket, but our tax brackets can be anywhere between 25 to 50%. Imagine working 2.5 days a fucking week, probably 3 days a week in reality right now, because people got to earn more money just to get by. Imagine 3 of those days that you work, that you toil, that you sweat, that you, I don't know, and just dislocated from doing what you want in life, go straight to the freaking government. Theft. Charlie Cause says, didn't they say there was a leak, or that's their excuse? I read something about that, but there was nothing confirmed that I could find on it. That's why I was saying what I said was the actual releases of information that we do know, that it did leave Wyoming, it did arrive in California. It was sealed, and it was still sealed when it got to California. And when they opened it, it was empty. Could have been a leak. Could have just been pissing ammonium nitrate all the way across, or halfway across the country. But who knows? Who knows? Norman Lacey says, can't be EMP. That would most likely take out the satellites and the sat phones. Yes, I agree with that, Norman Lacey, 100%. Unless they've got some way to protect those phones. So they issued them and then said, right, you have to keep this off and you have to keep it in this Faraday bag or Faraday cage or something like that. The other part of that is the satellites. Yeah, maybe. Because here's the interesting thing. A really effective EMP attack actually happens up in the stratosphere, And the reason it is more effective up there is that as it passes through the layers of the atmosphere, this is my idiot crayon version understanding of EMP, potential EMP attacks, by the way, that it actually increases in power. So something that if you exploded on the ground would have a, I don't know, 30K radius or something like that, take out electronics within 30K radius, or 100K radius, or 150, depending on the size of the actual explosion. If you did it up in the atmosphere, not only does it hit a wider area, but it hits much stronger. That EMP, that electromagnetic pulse, hits much stronger because it increases as it comes through the atmosphere. And I don't know the exact, I can't remember, I did read it, but I can't remember the exact reasoning for that. There is something to do with the atmospheric conditions that amplify the effect of an EMP. My point being that atmosphere doesn't amplify it up in that satellite orbit. So the ones around the explosion, I imagine, would actually be affected, but anything outside of the radius that we kind of normally have of a nuclear weapon probably wouldn't be affected. Like I said, idiot left-handed crayon version of it. Sorry if you're left-handed, but why weren't you drowned at birth? No, I'm just joking. Left-handed people are cool. Uhtred, son of Uhtred, says 30 tons is 1 times truck and dog trailer worth of material, generally speaking. Yep. Truck. Wait. Off memory, you're from the UK. Are you talking about a truck as in a very large vehicle, like a Mack truck, like a Kenworth truck, like a what's the brand? Scania? Or are you talking truckers in the American version of truck, which Aussies call utes, utilities? Utility. Because I mean, either way, it's a pretty big bang. And if we think about the Oklahoma bombing, that was, off memory, a pickup truck or a van. I think it was a pickup truck. I was pretty young when it happened. I didn't care about explosions and stuff happening in the US at that time. That sort of amount of explosive device, especially if it's released in the right way, and the Oklahoma bombing one was released in the right way, in what we would call, in kind of explosive circles, tamping, where you actually increase the effect of an explosion by having something around it. Sounds a bit weird, but the force that can actually happen when you're in an enclosed space is bigger, or the effect is bigger, than if you're exploding that out in open air. It's kind of like if I had a small amount of explosive in my hand right now, tiny little bit of explosive, and it went bang, it might burn, it might even, put a divot in my hand. If I had that same amount of explosive and closed my fist around it and it exploded, then it could blow my entire hand apart. So, these sorts of effects, I probably shouldn't be teaching people about explosives, but these sort of effects could increase it. Uhtred's in Sydney, right? Sorry, I forgot. It's a Kenworth dual axle and a trailer. Yeah, quite a large amount. What would you call it? Like a dump truck, maybe a cement mixer worth of this sort of stuff. I was in Kabul at the time when I was in Kabul at the time when several of these went off, but there was one particularly large one that happened around the German embassy, and it was a huge effect, and that would not have been 30 tons. Off memory, I want to say it was like 5. My memory's a bit sketchy on this, but I think it was, off memory, it was about 5 tons worth of explosive material in that truck when it went off, and it fucked shit up. Like, it went big style. All right. We're at 45 minutes. Wow. Done all right. Last one from today is From Popular Mechanics, Denmark is mysteriously tremoring, and no one knows why. If you keep an eye on things like earthquakes and volcanic activity, then I don't think you'd be wrong in thinking there's a fair amount of them happening right now. Okay, we've had a couple of big ones, and I'm talking about 7 to 8 on the Richter scale within the last 2 weeks. We've been fortunate that they haven't happened directly in a populated area. A lot of them are happening out to sea or just off the shore, which has changed the effects of them. That we're not seeing, huge destruction or loss of life or anything like that. So we're seeing these, what would you call it? These effects on the earth, these things that are happening right now around the world that are a little bit of a cause for concern for people like me, who look at this sort of stuff all the time. If we think about like the possible effects that this might have, maybe it's a number of different things. Maybe it's just a weird coincidence. We don't know, but we are seeing them, and this is another one. Now, Denmark doesn't lie on any direct fault line. And that's not like the be all and end all for seismic activity. You don't have to be on a fault line to have earthquakes. You can have them anywhere, in reality, but they're just much more rare. This, though, is not consistent with an earthquake. It's not consistent with volcanic activity. It's something that has seismologists a little bit baffled. They don't really know what it is. So seismologists don't understand why they recorded minor tremors on the Danish island Bornholm on Saturday. They call the recordings acoustic pressure waves and have ruled out earthquake and explosives at the source. Some unknown atmospheric event is the latest theory. Now, I've talked about not only atmospheric events, but solar activity and how it appears to be linked to seismic activity. And this is not my theory. I have not studied the science on this. I am really just listening to another YouTuber called Suspicious Observers. And if you haven't got around their stuff, I recommend it. I think it's a fascinating theory. I'm not saying it's 100% right or 100% wrong. I'm just saying it seems compelling to me. Maybe that's what we're looking at here, is some sort of other activity that's going on that's actually maybe caused by solar, maybe caused by atmospheric conditions. I don't know. Spice Gal says my mind goes to HARP. Potentially. The tendency for a lot of us to jump on the HARP sort of thing, though, whenever something like this happens, that's something that I'm always pump the brakes on a little bit. If you had the ability to do this, would you be doing it randomly against non-specific targets? Possibly, just as a diffusion measure. I would think that it's the sort of thing that you want to keep in your back pocket and use it when you want to. The other thing is, why wouldn't you use it when you actually did have an enemy? I.e., if the USA has this technology, this HARP technology, and can affect any point on the Earth that they want with some form of weather and or geological conditions, why wouldn't they use that in Russia? Why aren't we seeing earthquakes in Russia every day? Why aren't we seeing horrific weather in Russia every day? Or are they just reserving this to use on their own allies and their own people? That's what I think. That InstaChick says, same, and could it be a new volcano forming? I mean, it could be, but there was the scientists on this, the seismologists on this were pretty specific. They were like, this is not consistent with any sort of seismic activity that we've seen before. It's a weird sound. I am inclined to be partially, at least, in the camp of the person who sent me this story, who said, obviously, a Stargate was activated. What else could it be? Definitely Stargate. When in doubt, sci-fi it out. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe the Earth's mantle is de-linking from the crust. Maybe there is some weird experiment that's going on under the surface there that they don't want people to know about. Maybe it has something to do with CERN. Maybe it has something to do with HARP. I don't know. Insert conspiracy theory here, please. If anyone knows any more information about that, let me know. Loch Ness out of his cage. How do you know it's a him? Please do not misgender the Loch Ness monster. All right, that is it for today. Because I'm starting to fade. Need more caffeine. Maybe used in Turkey earthquake, says Spyscale 27. Not from government orders. Banking cartel. Turkey didn't want to comply with central bank. Yes, I actually didn't touch on Turkey today, and that was one of the stories that I was like, I want to touch on it, but it's going to open up a frigging can of worms. Turkey is in a very weird space right now. There will be no turkey for Thanksgiving. Yeah, Turkey is sitting on a knife edge at the moment, and Turkey is a real key swing vote area. That sounds like a weird thing to say, but Turkey it could go either way. Turkey could go into the BRICS, into Russia's sort of sphere. Turkey could go directly into the NATO sphere. But yeah, I'm like I said, I'm not getting into it. Stop it. All right. You're trying to get me to talk more, and I'm not going to do it. Captain Quest says, underground doof is my vote. I like it. All right. I'm going to go with that one. You're spot on. Underground doof. Love it. Love it and love you guys. Again, apologies, I've been away for so long, but as you can hear, man, flu is a thing. Plus, I've been overseas doing fun stuff teaching people how to not die in war zones. All right. Yeah, that's it. That's it for today. Hope you're having a great Saturday if you're an Aussie. Hope you're having a great Friday night. I think it's still Friday. If you're an American, hey, here's some exciting news. I hear that the borders are open to the unclean now into the US. That's exciting stuff. Why? Because the WHO just came out and said, oh, that COVID, that's not a thing anymore. That's not a thing. Don't worry about it. Don't even worry about it. How people aren't scratching their head and going like, what the fuck did we just do for the last 3.5 years? What happened? Why did you make us jump through all those fucking hoops and then just at the end of it go, okay, it's cool now. We're done. It's over. Again, the normies, the NPCs, I don't get them. I don't get them. I don't know how people, rational, thinking human beings, look at this sort of stuff and go, yeah, this is fine. This is okay. It's not okay. That's not okay what they did to us for 3 years. And then just to turn around and go like, what? COVID? No, it's not a thing. Idiots. Mask? No, don't worry about it. All right, enough bitching and complaining. I'm going to go get another coffee. Yes, love you all. Thank you very much for joining me. And I hope to put out another SitRep very soon. And hope to get back on the video making bandwagon as well. Thanks for joining me, whether you're on Instagram, YouTube, Rumble, or on the audio version podcast. Love yous. Keep prepping. Peace out, homies. Oh, Semper Paratus. That's what I always say, isn't it? It's been 3 weeks. I'm so sorry.